First of all, good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of DrupalCamp. I know you already got the welcome message this morning, so thank you for attending this session. I kind of evolved this session a lot since I first submitted it to DrupalCamp. As I got in and started creating the session, and more and more things came to mind in it, and it sort of evolved. It actually dovetails nicely if you attended Greg's session yesterday on layouts and ways to control the editor experience. I'm glad to see so much attention being given to the editorial experience in Drupal. I named this, it's probably poorly named now, but entity reference with layout. If you're not familiar with entity reference with layout, it's a module that came out, I want to say year and a half ago. Okay, there we go. A bit about me, Scott Sawyer. I'm a freelancer, been on Drupal.org since 2008. Well, one of my favorite things to do in Drupal is actually help other people answer other people's questions. If you are on the Slack channel, if you've got any questions about any of this, that's a great place to reach me, or on Twitter. And as a freelancer, I'm always looking for work. I just thought I'd throw that out there, right? So why bother working on the Drupal editorial experience? Well, in my opinion, Drupal has a perception problem. It's underrated. You hear all the time, oh, Drupal is so hard or clunky or all this sort of thing. I feel like a lot of that is focused on older experiences, people who maybe became familiar with Drupal during the Drupal 6 days when it really was a beast. But I wanted to, show this graphic from Drupal.org, the weekly project usage. And Drupal 8 and 9 is starting to make some inroads after 5 years. It has about half of the installs that Drupal 7 currently has. So we need to grow the install base. Whoops, wrong arrow key. What we really need are more developers making money with Drupal. And that includes myself, right? So we all need to stay employed. We need more Drupal installs so that we can make more money with Drupal so we can stay in our careers. So how is Drupal perceived? Well, we've heard everybody's seen the graphic with the little Drupal learning curve. Hopefully, if you haven't, I should have clipped it for this presentation. But you hear Drupal is hard, Drupal is confusing, and Drupal is not user-friendly. The reality is, well, sure, it can be hard. That's not really the focus of this, but yeah, it can be hard. More for, I think, on site building. One of the reasons, obviously, Drupal is confusing. I said this options versus decisions, right? In the WordPress world, they're famous for saying decisions and not options, right? So if you've built much WordPress websites, you run into this all the time where a decision has been made for you and there's no option to do what it is you actually want to do. And I feel like Drupal takes the opposite tact. They say, well, give me all the options. And so you wind up with a lot of options. And then it's not user friendly. Well, let's make Drupal more user friendly. And that is to, I would say, in a lot of cases, the primary stakeholders, right? The people that actually have to use it. What is the problem we are trying to solve today? How are we trying to make Drupal more user-friendly? Well, primarily we're talking about how to build content, how to lay it out, how to control what the editor has in mind for how they want their page to appear. There's lots of different ways to do this in Drupal over the years. I did, yeah, okay, I did mention panels here. Field group to add some structure. Panels, obviously, if you've ever used panels, it has so many options for controlling the layouts of the page. Display suite, which is an old but good one. You've got blocks, right? So you've got regions on your page and you can put blocks in them. Great. Layout builder, which is, the new hotness, of course, etc. Well, let's talk about some of the etc., right? So each of these has their pros and cons. There are definitely benefits to using each of these, but from an editor experience, first of all, they all have their own little paradigms, their own little quirks. They all work their own little way, which is fine, but none of them actually work in the interface that the content editor has to work on every day, right? So the editor interface, when you hit node edit, you don't really get to control the content, the structure, the layout of the page. You get to control the content, you fill in the fields, but you don't really have any control at this point for how the page is going to look. With Drupal, your editor can have so many links to control things, right? If you think about it, there's the block layout page and the block construction page, and now we've got a layout tab. When really the editor just wants to click edit and edit, right? WordPress is famous for its super streamlined editor. And Greg touched on Gutenberg yesterday, where you're controlling the layout of the page while you're building the content. What is the solution for this? Well, let's focus on what this user actually wants to do, what our editors want to do. They want to create content, and that's really all they want to think about. They don't want to have to think about, well, do I need to go to the layout tab, or now do I go to the structure, block content? What about the panels page? We want to unify. Yeah, first thing we want to do is focus on what they want to do is edit. Simplify the admin. Take away all of those confusing words and menu options that they don't understand. And finally, we want to unify the site editing experiences. We want to keep it as consistent for what it is they're trying to do. And this is just a little graphic we're going to see a little bit more later. And how am I doing on time? Good, at 10 minutes after. So enter entity reference layout. Entity reference layout. The benefit of this is that, well, it uses the entity reference revisions field. Think about it as a special kind of paragraph. As you can see in the little note at the bottom, entity reference layout, since I created this, they've actually replaced the module with a new module called layout paragraphs. It actually works with paragraphs, or as it is a paragraph. And what you're doing, what your editor gets, if you've used paragraphs, you're familiar with how you can create any kind of paragraph that you want. Your editor goes and hits, I'm going to create a node here, and they can control the layout of the page, of the content, as they're creating the content. I think this is a very powerful feature. Let's talk really quickly about layouts. Even in Layout Builder, I just don't think the Drupal default layouts are great, right? This is bricks. I mean, this is a carryover from, Display Suite had these, and panels used these. And I mean, that's fine if that's what you want your entire page to look at, but I think with Layout Builder, they really kind of went into the idea of you're building a row at a time or a stripe, which if you've ever used any front end framework like Bootstrap, which everybody uses, it seems like, or I like Foundation a lot, but they have this concept of rows, and it makes a lot of sense in sort of the layout builder or the layout sort of landscape. So I'm not a big fan of the default layouts. That doesn't make a lot of sense. I think it doesn't make sense to how an editor thinks about the page. I would look for something with sort of more flexibility, but also really lays out just a row at a time kind of thing, because that's how they're going to be building the content. I think it makes more sense in a componentized type of paradigm or way of thinking about content in sort of atomic chunks, if you will. I'm going to jump right into a demo. I recorded a video because, live demos never seem to work right. So let's go ahead and, okay, so this is me creating a page using entity reference layout and kind of making the editorial experience as smooth as possible. Now, the first thing you want to note, I'm going to pause it really quickly. The first thing to note here is when you are editing this page, you're not looking at the admin theme. Having an admin theme during the editing experience, it creates sort of this disconnect, right? We want to kind of unify the experience as much as possible. Okay, so these are just some settings fields that I like to create, title settings. There's no built-in way in Drupal to kind of control what the title looks like. You set it in a block and it just appears everywhere, and that's probably not what you have envisioned for your individual page. So now we're getting into the entity reference layout. And just a quick note, the layout paragraphs works very similar to this. So the content is mostly applicable here. So these layouts here are, I've created a custom module. I'm trying to get the people who currently maintain the foundation layouts module to consider this, but basically, let me roll this back a second. So basically, when you are editing this page, after we set the title here, all right, hurry up. All right, so this is the first thing you're presented with. Okay, so this big empty section. Okay, we're going to add a section to the section. I know that's a little weird. So we're going to select a layout, okay? And then now we're going to configure this layout so that this layout, we want it to be, now these settings here, I'm setting it 6 columns. If you've used Bootstrap or Foundation or any sort of front end framework that's columns based, this might make some sense to you. But you can come in here as an editor and control. Do I want these columns 50% of the page? Do I want them, 66 and 33? Instead of creating a layout for everything, every possible vision. Let me pause this again really quickly. You just a couple of layouts. There's 4 layouts, 1 column through 4 column. And then you can, as an editor, control how those columns look per breakpoint or device size. All right, so now that we have created the columns that we're going to put the content, we went, let's get right here. Okay, so we're going to add content. So this is sort of like paragraphs, right? This is paragraphs that we're doing. So the editor says, okay, I'm going to choose, I'm going to add a title. I fumble around here a little bit. All right, so add a title. This is a title. We'll just let this play for a second. All right, so now I'm going to add some text. Now, one thing I do want to draw your attention to here is you notice CK Editor doesn't have 50 million buttons. It has like six buttons. There's no style button. There's no buttons for colors or changing the element type. That is a huge distraction. And I don't know about you, but I've inherited sites. I worked with this one church where everybody who came in, they were like, oh, yeah, we can highlight and change backgrounds. There was some stuff that they had created through their little WYSIWYG that was absolutely unusable. Keep it simple. Strip it down. These little, we'll see the settings. Actually, if you look at this editor, it's actually pretty similar to how WordPress's little editor works. Minimal buttons. All right, so I'm going to just drop in some content here. And you'll notice each of these fields has a little settings section here. This is where they control the styling. Actually, as the developer, I'm controlling the styling because I'm giving them the options that make sense that I've already accounted for that will work with their brand, right? With their styling. All right, so let's see. We're going to do some things. Okay, styling. You notice I can change the text color and hopefully, okay, right there. I wanted to show you this. We've seen it before. I don't give my users a color wheel where they can just select any color in the world. No, they have a brand palette. All of those colors are pre-approved and will work together in the various environments that they can be used. So they can choose the font. They want a sans serif or a serif. And there we go. This is so nice, I think, for editors that you create your text, your title, you drop it in the page, and boom, you see it immediately. You've got your serif font, you got your 2-column, text CSS columns or whatever. Let's see what we're going to do over here. We're going to add content. Okay, this time we're going to add an image. All right, here's a couple of pre-selected. I asked my customer, this is a dev site of theirs, and they said, sure, that'd be great. We'd love it if you do this. All right, so now we're going to kind of fast forward and configure a new section. All right, so when I fast forward, it doesn't take any time at all to build each section, but you can see pretty quickly without leaving the interface. Oh, and this is, we got a little drag and drop, but without leaving the editing screen, the person creating the page can easily go in and configure and build out their responsive website without any help. And there we go. That's sort of the final result. Right here, I just kind of show that, I mean, this is just a demo more of, I guess, the front end framework. But you can see they can easily, with very little skill, they don't have to really understand the guts of Drupal at all. They don't, let me see if I can, how do I get out of this? All right. How do I get, this is supposed to shrink, right? Okay. Let me get off of that page. But they don't have to, all they have to do is know how to edit a note. And then training them is showing them how to use the editor. Very simple. Really quickly, a couple of things that we can do to make the editor experience, a couple of modules that make it easier. Field group, most people are familiar with that, but use field group to streamline what the forms look like. Don't show people all of the fields at once at all. Color field. I love color field because I can put in all of the brand's colors and don't have to think about it. They don't have to think about it. They can choose from their own palette, and you don't have to worry about them breaking the site. Hopefully, with their brand palette. Range slider widget, which actually this is a picture from range slider, but I couldn't get it to work in Drupal 9 in this into the layout paragraph. So I went back to range slider widget, but it has to run a bunch of patches right now to work in Drupal 9. So keep that in mind. But think about a number input where they've got to type in some number, and nobody likes that, right? But the slider is just things that you can do to make their experience better. Now, this is a module that I have not had a chance to play with. It's called Bootstrap Layout Builder. It looks pretty good. The only thing I don't really like is that this is a layout builder focused module. I haven't tried to use it with layout paragraphs, but the idea is they capture a lot of what I have been doing over in the layout paragraphs with having the settings and that sort of stuff, configurable at different breakpoints and all of that. I like the little visual interfaces. Oh, and it also supposedly works with any front end sort of column based front end. But it's a lot of options to look at all at once. And once again, I feel like Layout Builder, as great as Layout Builder is, you have to take the person out of the content editing experience in order for them to use it, which I think is a disconnect. But it's still great for a lot of things, as we'll talk about here in a second. So general principles. Let's simplify the controls. Minimize the number of fields somebody has to look at and think about at once. If you can give them a graphical control rather than punching in a number, such as using a range slider or a dial or a color picker, anything like that is better than having, I hate when they're like, oh, put in the class names. Class names, that doesn't make any sense to an editor, right? You're trying to teach the church lady how to use their brand new Drupal site, and you're like, oh, just ignore the class names. Simplify that, alter that form, get rid of that field. Don't show that to users. Inline instruction and help, right? You're going to give your training when you hand off your website, your project to them. Okay, here you go. Good luck remembering that. Never gonna. I've built little help sections in the website for editors. They never look there. They call me or send me an email. I forgot how to do this. Put the help in line. There's a great module I didn't mention yet called Markup, where you can put all of your help. It is a weird Drupalism where fields help and description is below the field, and as they teach you if you take a tech writing class, always put the warning before the action. So the markup module is great because you can put a field right before where their input is going to be that you can give instructions. And once again, I like to wrap it in a like a details element using field group and just say instructions, and you click on this and you can help them with that. So help sensible defaults. All of those settings, if that in the little video demo, if you don't click on a single settings and adjust anything, it'll still work, right? You want to set as many of the fields with the kind of defaults that are going to work in most circumstances, so that you are minimizing how much how much they have to touch. They can just go in and tweak that one thing that they care about. I want to change the text color. I want to change how many columns there are on mobile or something like that. Enforce the branding, right? So hopefully they have a style guide, and if, your customer has some sort of style guide, and if they don't, I would put that at the forefront of the project, right? So we need to know about your brand. We need to know what fonts you're going to use. We need to know what colors you're going to have, and all of those sorts of things. And then you build their style guide into the editor experience. And then leverage components, right? Paragraphs is great for components. So each of my paragraphs has one field for a thing that it does. So an image has a single image field. That's all. The title has one text box. So, and this is just a screenshot of, a lot of times with the some of the components. This section component here is sort of what layout paragraphs and entity reference layout uses to hold the layout information. Also, I did want to draw your attention to the what I call the widgets field. I don't like for editors to have to go into block layout. They don't understand what blocks are generally. I don't want them to move the blocks around the page that I have said that these blocks need to be here. Block editing is like an entirely different paradigm than text editing or page editing. So what I do, there's still a big need for blocks, right? So you got to create views and lists and that sort of thing. If there's something that a block of some kind, whether it's a view or some other kind of custom block that they're going to need to access in the page and be able to lay it out on a page, what I do is I create a little section, a region in in blocks that isn't printed out on the screen anywhere, but it's a region defined in my theme called widgets, and I just put any blocks that the editor wants access to in widgets. And then when they are creating a page, in their little drop down of components they can add is a widgets component where they can select pre-built blocks. So componentize the style guide defined in code, right? So this is like their color palette. And then basically I've got a bunch of pre-process functions for paragraphs, depending on what it is. And it basically jumps through my my style guide, and based on the fields that they select, it adds classes to that element. And then I've got a Sass component that matches up with that element. And basically all of the options are built into Sass. So so these projects are, when I build these websites, I've kind of got this boilerplate of pre-processed functions. I can just drop in the color definitions, and they get there's also a Sass component that keeps the color definitions, and then it builds out the style. Whatever the editor wants to do that I've given them access to is a component, and then I can make like libraries out of these, and this way your style sheets and your JavaScript stay small because that component has its own little style sheet. So when to use this? This is really good when your editors aren't familiar with Drupal. The editor experience, I find it a lot less using the layout paragraphs the way I showed you here. I think it's easier than even Gutenberg. I've used Gutenberg on several WordPress sites, never on a Drupal site. And honestly, a lot of times it's very frustrating. Some things are really nice, like when you go paste a bunch of paragraphs into a page and it breaks them all down into little discrete components is nice. But I don't know if they fixed this yet, but there was an issue where if you created a column section, once you set those column widths, you had no way of changing it. It's pre-built into WordPress how the columns are, what the gutters are going to be. when the breakpoints are going to hit. You don't have a lot of control. And then once you set it, there was no way to go back and make changes to it. So it was a bit of a nightmare the last time I built a WordPress site. So if your editor isn't familiar with Drupal, this is a great way to ease them into Drupal. I've had people, actually that last customer, AOA, they told me it was the easiest thing they have ever used to build out web pages. And that was a big compliment for me. And that's exactly what I want for them, right? So they've used Wix, they've used GoDaddy, whatever their page builder thing is. They like this better. It makes more sense to them. The options are curated to what they need. And so use it when you need a lot of flexibility. Marketing pages, I build a lot of marketing type of websites. The business just wants to get there. Oh, we just need to be able to promote whatever our product is or our service. And this is great for having pages that are just totally bespoke. But then the opposite is true, right? So don't use it when your content layout needs to be exact and identical from one piece of content to the next. So if you're doing something, building a knowledge base or something like that, don't use this for a knowledge base article. Don't use this for things that have to be highly structured for a purpose. I said don't do it when you don't have time to structure the backend forms. I've seen a lot of Drupal sites where the edit page is just wall of form fields. If you're not going to go in and structure the backend and spend some time laying it out so that your editors have a minimal experience, don't make it more confusing by throwing this in there, though I'd say this probably helps organize that. I was really worried about running out of time, and it looks like I've got plenty of time for questions. So I would really appreciate any questions, or if I'm going to sip on my coffee. Do I ever set the icons for the components? Not really, no. That's something that I've been looking to do. I need to create a set of icons, I think, is the thing I haven't gotten around to doing. But that would be, I think that'd be good to do. Have my clients do the pre-process work? You mean actually writing the preprocessor functions? Is that what you're asking me? Okay, so I'm not sure if you caught the very beginning, but okay, so I'm a freelancer. Most of my customers are very small or this are non-technical, let's say, or they do what they do, but they do not write code. Does that make sense? So no, my clients never, ever touch the code. They don't touch the code. They don't touch views. In fact, all of my production sites, I disable as much of the admin as absolutely possible. So it's sort of forget it, set it and forget it, right? I build out the views and then disable views UI. If anything I can disable the UI on production, I've got that built into config. So no, the direct answer to your question is no. If they have a hosting that they like that is going to be sufficient as far as resources and that sort of things go. Oh, sorry, I'm ignoring the. So as far as hosting, if they have something that is sufficient already that they use, that's great. But I typically use something like a DigitalOcean, a small VPS with a couple of gigs of RAM is sort of minimal expense. Yeah, it's cheap and easy. It's bare bones. It's fast. And I do a lot of the maintenance ongoing. Yeah, that's an important thing for me. Kaleem asks, do you believe Layout Builder is the future of layout, or do you think it's a combination of things? Do I think it's the future? I think it's the present. I don't know. Who knows what the future is going to be? I think yes for a while, but I feel like we are going to get something very JavaScripty, like maybe not Gutenberg. I think Gutenberg is great in a lot of ways, but I think it has some baggage, and who knows? Who knows the JavaScript world, right? As soon as everybody settles on React, it'll be a new hotness, right? It's always the new hotness. So I think Layout Builder is probably, for the foreseeable future, probably very important to Drupal. I think so. I think you're going to see a much broader ecosystem built around it, and just layouts in general, whether it's Layout Builder. I use Layout Builder a lot. I'm really liking this entity reference layout or layout paragraphs way of actually building discrete content. But if I'm not building discrete content, a lot of times I will use Layout Builder or just old school Twig. Yeah, templates and paragraphs. Yeah, that's I like templates and paragraphs for components, right? Do I have GitHub sharing for some of your preprocessors, or know any of the template examples available? I need to put some of it in there. That put some of this stuff into GitHub. Yeah, mostly I honestly use Bitbucket mostly. I could probably most of what I build, I've got some boilerplate stuff, but it gets pretty custom. I could throw my I've got like a paragraphs inc file that I just throw into each project and build up for each project. I don't think there's anything proprietary in there. I'd be happy to throw that up on GitHub. Hit me up on Slack or Twitter and just remind me to do that. That's actually a good idea. Templates and stuff, I tend to recreate the wheel each time because I feel like every time I do it a little better. So let's see. Let me see if I can pull up one. I've got. Oh, I think it's probably broken at the moment. So, but that would be a great idea. GitHub, Bitbucket works, sharing some of your preprocessors. Yeah, I got that. We'll definitely do that. So, are there any other questions? Because I believe. Oh, I've got minutes left. So, you guys want to, guys, gals, everyone, you want to chat about something else? Anything else, Drupally? If you're not currently involved, I got okay, 4-minute countdown. That's plenty of time. A big part of the reason for this is not just to make my life easier and to reduce my calls. Like I said in the very beginning of this, we need to change public perceptions of Drupal. I've heard so many, I'm on Twitter a lot, and I get a lot of like people in the JavaScript community, front end community on Twitter that I follow for various reasons. When Drupal is mentioned, a lot of times, whether it's Reddit or Twitter, there are negative connotations. Maybe somebody has had, oh, I can't stand working with Drupal. It's so hard to work with. We need to change that perception. It is so much easier to work with now. And I feel like When I use WordPress, like a plain WordPress website, or somebody throws Divi on there or something like that, God, it's every bit as it is very clunky. And we need to change those perceptions. One, because it benefits me directly, because I need to sell more Drupal websites so I can continue to make an income. And we all do, right? We need the perception of Drupal to be very high. And one of the things that we can do is, well, evangelize Drupal, be a member of the Drupal Association. That helps out the community. Go on the Slack channel and help. A lot of times, I love helping people. I feel like maybe I have the heart of a teacher or something, where I just enjoy helping other people with their problems. Oh, you can't figure out how to do that? Well, if I know how to do it, or if I've done it in the past and I can jump through some code in a repo and remember how to do it. So I love helping people in the Slack channel, the Drupal Slack. I don't think I have got a link of it, but go there, just lurk in the background. And if you see somebody, I see it all the time. Oh, I'm new to Drupal. I don't know how to whatever, click on something, you know? Yeah, we definitely need to change that's great. Drupal works for enterprises, but guess what? I don't have our enterprise clients. I just don't have enterprise clients. I have a ton of small small businesses. I don't even have what you would define a small business is up to 500 employees. I don't have any customers that have 500 employees, and I still need to sell Drupal websites. So I need to make my Drupal websites very friendly to people who aren't, I feel like some of these big universities, the teachers and the people that have to use software and they just throw it. My wife is a teacher, and I'm like, golly, the software you have to use is so clunky. And they're bureaucrats, and they're just, this is what you have, learn to work with it. My customers aren't like that. If they're not happy, they're going elsewhere. So I need to do everything I can to make their experience happy. Yeah, exactly. I've had both, which is fine. I can serve both. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't come from a computer. I guess I've got a degree in IT, and I started building websites in 2005, and I kind of built my own PHP framework, and then that was a mess. That was a hodgepodge of functional or whatever, the procedural programming. So moving to Drupal 8 was like this really hard thing, and I just started by rebuilding my own website in Drupal 8, and like, okay, here's how I build a module, and here's how I do the stuff. And I've learned a lot. And move into Drupal 9, you really appreciate how some of this stuff works, right? Performance of Drupal 8 is night and day over a similar Drupal 7 site. I use a fraction of the modules in Drupal 7. In Drupal 6, it was even worse, right? It was a module for everything. Oh, you want anything. There was like a specialized module for it. And so a Drupal 7 site would have some of the bigger ones that I built, they would have 150 modules in there. And now my websites might have 15 or 20 that just are sort of general purpose, that solve a lot of problems in a general sense. So I think Drupal definitely works better for smaller sites than it ever has. The one thing is, though, with the composer dependency requirement, they're not, these customers, they're not going to host this themselves. If you're selling a small business a website without a maintenance understanding, you're kind of doing them a disservice. Of course, I feel the same way about a WordPress site, right? If you're building there's so many WordPress jockeys that I complain about this all the time. They're just like, oh, here's your WordPress site with your Divi license that I bought in my name. And well, I'm just ranting. But anyway, without a maintenance agreement, you are setting them up to fail. So don't set up your customers to fail. It looks like I've actually run over my 8:45 time. So with that, I'm going to bring this to an end. I didn't see any other questions. Oh, can we stop saying yes? If you have any other questions, hit me up on Twitter or Slack. I didn't put my phone number out there, but if you've got a question you want to reach me, I'll give you my phone number. Or if you got work for me, that's great too. All right. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.